My BMW comes with split throttle bodies, standard actually. So instead of there being a bank of 4 throttle bodies glued together, there's 2 and 2. In standard trim, the throttle bodies work all 4 together. But if you've got the race kit like we have, it's actually called the calibration kit, and that comprises of a new loom, ECU and dash, all Motec, very expensive. It allows you to manipulate the twin throttle bodies. So in one of my riding modes, dry 1, I've got splits, and in dry 2, all 4 work together. Now, I've been persevering with the twin throttle bodies. Used it through some of the track days we did last year when we were testing the bike in the dry. We did a wet race at Brands at the end of last year, which was just wet from start to finish. We used normal, all 4 working together. But this year, our first meeting was at Snetterton 200 with Thundersport in the GP1 Elite class, and decided to do split throttle bodies the whole way through. The idea behind split throttle bodies is, and it comes from MotoGP and WSB, BSB also use it as well. So the idea is that the bike's always on 2 cylinders, unless you're full throttle, then it goes on to 4. So there's less power in the middle of the corner, so you don't have to control wheel spin, so it doesn't really need its traction control. It's kinder on tyres, and theoretically it should be easier to ride. And I've used the system on lots of race bikes I've been lucky enough to ride with my MCN hat on, and it's all worked really well. But on my BMW, it doesn't make the bike feel very nice. It makes the engine feel really tight, really raw. So much so that during qualifying for GP1, I actually pulled in because I just thought any minute now you're going to hear that of the crank going or something like that, or I thought I was going to look down and see oil everywhere. So on the way into a corner, the engine feels really tight because it's closed 2 of the throttles off. In the middle of the corner, it's just really vibey and aggressive, even though it's only got the power of a 500 twin, really, isn't it? Because it's only got 2 cylinders going. It vibrates so much it actually shakes the bolts loose. And then coming out of the corner, the bike just hasn't got much power, as it wouldn't do. So I find it very, very difficult to ride. Not only do I find it difficult to ride, I'm really slow on it. So scratching our head all weekend. Didn't actually get that many dry sessions because all the way through free practice it rained. And then some of the races were wet as well, which we decided not to do. There's nothing gained really to be going out in the wet if you're not doing a championship. You're just sploshing around and risking crashing, and it's pretty miserable. The weather was more like February than May. So I was on the phone to Fortis Racing, who helped us at Brands all weekend, who are BMW's race support in the UK. And they're really helpful with reminding me how to set the bike up, how to tell the dash what to do and all that kind of stuff to get going. And they was also asking me to send them my data from the data login, so I just emailed that to them and they could see what's going on. And they basically recommended that I change back to all 4 cylinders. And once I did that, it completely transformed the bike. So when you're riding with split throttle bodies, I think you need to be the kind of rider that's got no mechanical sympathy, because it just sounds horrible. And I can't bring myself to hurt it, or what I think is hurting it. And also you need a rider that is prepared almost at full lean at the apex just to go full throttle. I mean, after 30 odd years of riding and racing, I'm pre-programmed just to squeeze it on coming out of the corner like everybody does. But the bike's too slow when you do that. What you need to do is pin it, and I just can't bring myself to do it. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about electronics from people who don't like electronics, but I think using electronics is a special skill in itself. It's not taking away your skill of riding. You actually have to learn another skill. And I guess people think that because they think other riders are getting away with it, you know, that they've got some kind of electronic safety net. But for racing, electronics, all they actually do is slow you down. If you lean on the electronics, the power's cut, so you can't go forward. So the trick is to kind of ride up to the electronics, just underneath for sort of maximum power. The wheelie control on my bike's really good, and that saves energy climbing all over the front of it. And the traction control is really good as well. So those 2 electronics and the engine braking control, it works properly now. I'm not on the split throttles. The quick shifter is fantastic. So there are some electronics that save you a little bit of energy and thought, but you don't ride any differently. It doesn't really, it's not a magic pill, or else everyone would be going the same speed. So with the bike running on 4, it suddenly feels normal again. The engine's much smoother, you can kind of feel its character properly, and it also lets the chassis flow more. So all the settings I had in the bike for twin throttle bodies are suddenly kind of out the window. Now the bike's flowing better. So we kind of start from zero again in the dry, but at least the bike feels normal and I know what to do. So it was pretty much work in progress at Snetterton. The results weren't brilliant. I was a few seconds off my normal pace. A lot of that's being ring rusty as well as anything else. But we know where we're going. So in the 2 dry races I did, and they're the only dry races I've ever done on that bike, we entered a race called the Acer Clubs, which is kind of an open race, which we entered last minute, so we had to go on the back of the grid, finished 10th in that one. And then in the main GP1 race, I was running 6th or 7th, and then ran on at the back straight because I couldn't find a gear, and rejoined and finished 12th. But despite all that, we still went away really happy because now we know the way forward. And when we turn up at the next round, which is also at Snetterton, this time on the 300 layout and not the 200, then we kind of know where we're going, and I've kind of got used to riding properly again. You know, road testing for a living is fantastic, but it knocks your speed out of you because you're always riding well within yourself. So you've got to kind of, you know, push yourself to brake later, corner harder, and get on the throttle earlier. And only racing can do that. Only racing can draw that out of you. But it was a great meeting. It was really good to be back. Thundersport GB are really, really well run. It's just like clockwork. And there was a few high-profile riders there. Pete Hickman, Brian McCormack for the FHO team. So it's good seeing them there. I mean, we've had McWilliams there in the past. And Bob was there all weekend helping me as well. No Fabrice, unfortunately. He couldn't make it. There was a few other little things we did to the bike. We lowered the gearing. We put a 15 tooth front sprocket on instead of a 16 from advice from Fortis, and that worked really well. Just gave it a little bit more oomph out the corners. And also we mucked about with the quick shifter. It wasn't, or the gear linkage, it wasn't really working properly, but now it's nice and smooth and feels fantastic. And the bike is just amazing. I mean, I don't get to see it much because Bob looks after it, but when I see it in the flesh every time, it's just absolutely stunning. I rode the M1000RR a few days before, and because that's a road bike and mine's a race bike, the M1000 is nowhere near as good as my bike. Although the wings make a massive difference. They absolutely pin the front wheel down the 2 straights at Donington when I rode it. So that was Snetterton. We're going to be back on track again very, very soon. So thanks for watching, and thanks to everybody for their help and support.